Welcome to the Property Management Framebreakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. This philosophy, own the outcome. What do you mean by it, man? Like what is own the outcome to you as a business, as a person? Like how do you talk about it?
Yeah. So when I think of owning the outcome, there's so much that we don't control in life, right? If going back to like old school Stephen Covey, like there's a larger circle of influence and there's a very small circle within that influence, which is our circle of control. And generally speaking, in property management, Peter Lohman said it well. He said, the surface area we cover is so vast. And there's so much we do, and there's so much out of our control, from resident actions to owner actions to vendor actions. It's very tempting at some point when we're doing property management to put a fence around what we're going to own. And if we are going to 100% go for owning the outcome, it means that we own the result of every relationship and every interaction, even and especially when those interactions and those relationships don't go the way we would hope.
It sounds a lot like extreme ownership. Did you read a Jocko Willink book and
Absolutely.
decide to go all in? Is that what happened?
Man, you just pulled that right out of our playbook. Yeah, our previous iteration of this company value was extreme ownership, because I love Jocko. I love how he took full ownership of something that he wasn't directly involved in because it was under his supervision. In fact, in life, what I love to do is it's almost like if you get snarky about it, like if you're in a scenario where everybody's pointing fingers at each other, and if you just step up, even if you had nothing to do with the scenario, and say, it's my fault, 100% my fault. It's like, okay, we just stopped this ridiculous blame game because someone stepped up and took ownership. People become leaders because they're willing to take more ownership than most people would dare. They're audacious enough to say, my responsibility, my fault, my ownership. And what they do in that moment of daring is they significantly expand that circle of influence. And that should be our goal constantly. How do I expand my circle of influence? When Jocko Willink, when there was that situation, if you haven't read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, absolutely read the book. There was friendly fire, and it was friendlies against friendlies shooting at each other. This is like the cardinal rule: do not do this in war, right? And then the brass came and they deconstructed everything, and he got on stage and he said, whose fault was this? And one of his SEALs said, it was my fault. I was supposed to radio in my position. I didn't do it. He said, no, it's not your fault. Somebody else says, it was my fault. This was supposed to happen. We were ahead of schedule. I didn't make it clear. Nope, not your fault. Down the line, his guys and different leaders in that room said, this is my fault. And he said, it's my fault. In that moment, he manifested the fact that he was the guy that could be trusted. Everything is about trust. And when someone dares to say, I take full ownership of this outcome, their trustworthiness goes through the roof. When someone says, not my problem, how dare you blame me for this, what's going on right now? And I'm angry and pissed that you would suggest that this is my fault. What happens? Circle of influence shrinks. Trust drops. We're moving the wrong direction.
Man, that was great.
So early on, that's the hardest part, is just believing. And then once you have some level of momentum, I think the hardest part is not stopping doing the things that gave you success early on. It's really easy to get to a point where you start coasting and you're kind of sitting on what you've done, and you get distance from the things that made you great. And that inertia to pull you away, focus on other things, it's constant. But the minute that you do it, the entropy begins, and it doesn't happen all at once. So it's really easy not to see, but it builds and it builds. And then eventually there's a breaking point, and now you have velocity in a new negative direction, and stopping that isn't as easy as just paying attention and tuning in.
You went right into the vein of like what I really, really want to talk about, which is essentially the innovator's dilemma in property, you know, like the innovator's dilemma of when things are changing and stuff is happening, how hard it is to accept the new reality, and how often the people that are in pole position when stuff is changing, who have the most resources and have the most data and have the most
Pass up the opportunity.
have the opportunity, they don't take it, and they essentially get disrupted by an incumbent. And where I would love to start in that conversation is a conversation that you and I were having last time I was here in Austin, when you told me that you had to make the decision to, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What I understood was like, you had to kind of like foundationally rebuild the software because you understood that like what got you here isn't going to get you there. And you had to go back to like a point where it was, you know, like you had to stop that momentum and you had to start a new momentum. Tell me more about that. Did I interpret that correctly?
Yeah. So the story early on was that I was doing lead generation. I did that for a couple of years, and that was going great until it wasn't. It was based on search volatility. And there was a point that I realized it just wasn't a business that I wanted to be in. But the nugget that I got out of it was that we were sending leads to folks that weren't calling the leads, and then we're saying the leads are no good and they wanted a lead refund. That was like an existential problem for the business. So we started tracking follow-up, realized that it was poor. And that gave us the idea that like the one thing we could do to augment and impact that wasn't sales training or motivating people or showing them the ROI of getting better at sales and marketing. It was just making sure that they called the leads faster. That was the only thing within our control that we could actually influence. So we built a feature that did that. That became the seedbed of Lead Simple. We added more features over time, and it became kind of a fleshed out CRM. And eventually that started to plateau too, because that apathy around sales and marketing, it's pervasive, but really it's even more egregious in other industries. Like let's say the brokerage side of the industry, it's even more egregious, the lack of callback and lack of responsiveness over there. In property management, it'll always be defined by the fact that these are recurring revenue businesses. And there's just a lot of folks that aren't interested in growing currently, or aren't interested with a degree of commitment and effort that would actually create the elements necessary to grow. As a result of that, I could feel that the TAM was constrained. It was never going to be a breakout hit. It was going to be a good, solid lifestyle business. And I wanted to keep going. And it was at that point that we realized we either needed to expand horizontally or vertically. We either needed to go into other industries or we needed to go deeper into this industry, which meant going post-sale. That was intimidating, and there was internal debate about what to do. And we had a lot of debate, and it really was one of those moments of like, what's the right answer? There probably isn't one. Both of those options are valid. And I decided to double down and go deeper into the same industry. That would required us to ingest way more context and to wrap our hands around a new set of problems that were unknown, but I knew there would be yield. Going through that process, though, with a bootstrap business, it just meant that we had a couple years of flat growth where we were working hard, breaking ground, doing new stuff, but there was no visible progress to the market. And that looks like decline and stagnation externally. So going through that, yeah, it took some patience, but on the other side, I was really confident there would be yield, and it turns out there was.
From the first moment that I met you, man, I was like, dude, I'm attracted to the way that this guy speaks. like the rate of speech, your vocabulary. This is just a complete sidebar.
All right, head it.
But your level of headiness and speech and talking about horizontally versus vertically and talking about yield and this type of vocabulary in the property management industry is this like vernacular common? Like are people do you find yourself ever speaking above the room? And I'm just trying to figure it out because I'm trying to make a podcast for the industry and I wanna make sure, right? Like everybody I speak to is like really, really smart.
Yeah,
but
for
then
sure.
Like you're like next level smart, right?
I don't know about that. I think that there's definitely some tone deafness and some indulgence on my behalf.
Yeah.
I choose to calibrate towards what feels good and natural to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody really smart said that communication is what was received, not what was said.
Yeah.
And if I obeyed and followed that better, I probably would speak in a slightly different way just to kind of like cater to everybody. But I'm me. You're getting the unique flourish of me. So I follow what feels good and right for me, and that works for some people and it doesn't for others, and it is what it is.
Yeah, well, it really works for me, right? So
I get asked the question, AI, Jay, won't AI cannibalize your business if it's replacing remote team members? Well, I mean, look, all businesses change and shift. We started as just a remote team member service company, and we did that for about a decade. And then a couple years ago, we really leaned into what we learned is that we can help people with direct hire remote team members and place good people. But if your company is a mess, if you don't have systems in place, if you don't have a way to train people and to lead people, then you're going to fail. And, selfishly, we want companies to succeed that we work with. It's better, just better for everybody all around. So we really started leaning in. Where now half of our revenue comes from coaching and consulting. The other half comes from remote team members. So companies adapt, companies change. Same thing's going to happen with AI. People will still be needed. There's going to be less local people that need it because we have the philosophy that a desk job is a desk job and a field job is a field job. And a desk job can be done from anywhere in the world. So if it's a desk job that can't be solved with AI or an AI co-pilot, then there's going to be a remote team member. So there's still going to be remote team members. The remote team members that we place are going to be AI certified. The positions will likely change. Right now, about half of the positions that we place are maintenance coordinators, and I see that number will decrease. And we might be placing a lot of higher level team members like process architects and ops managers, integrators, right? Salespeople. Like these are all company positions that we place for right now because we do headhunting. But yeah, you have to adapt and change. And when you first started with this idea and this question, I was thinking about the time and the working on because I was thinking of the property manager that doesn't adapt, the one that is comfortable, or as I like to say, complacent, fat and happy. Well, things are going well. We're doing fine. We don't need remote team members. We don't need AI. Right now, you don't. And either you're complacent or you're just too busy working in the business. And if you're working in the business and you're burnt out and then you don't have time. And if you don't have time, then you don't have time to listen or to research and acquire that knowledge and educate yourself and surround yourself with the right people and be intentional and present listening to that and really be a true business owner to work on the business and not in the business. So once you move towards working as an operator to owning a business, you'll be able to take the time to understand how important this is to shift. So either you don't have the time or you're too comfortable if you're not making the moves to lean into AI, or you just don't think it's important yet. But you're going to see how important it is. And it might take a couple years for some people, it might take longer than that, but this is going to be faster than the evolution of hiring remote team members. This shift is going to be much, much faster.
Well said, my friend. You just finished telling me that this industry doesn't do a fifth of what you do in content. And if they did, they would do really well for them, right? Because it's a young industry. Tell us, when you describe your content program and like what you're doing, how do you describe it to people?
Well, here, it's funny, and I think about this. Jordan Muela, it was only 2018 that he started saying like departmentalizing sales and marketing. Like that wasn't even a thing in our industry before 2018. So jumping into it back then at that point and doing that ourselves, it just kind of trial and error ever since. But the opportunity for anybody to here's the thing that really gets me excited is in the property management space, no matter what city you're in, it probably doesn't take that much to stand out above and beyond what your competition is doing. And that's where I think property managers have a real leverage in any market that they're in.
Yeah, totally. And just to bring our friend who's listening into the conversation right now, we're talking about you having a local market podcast for Chicago where you interview other investors. I assume you're interviewing active clients, people that you want to meet. You and I work together to bring in like a lending provider and do like a brand collaboration there at an event, right? Like you've kind of like injected this thing into what you are doing in building relationships, in creating content to the point where I believe, was it last year that you guys went all in and you built a studio inside your office?
Yeah, no. So we started this in 2020. It was the
Yeah.
year of COVID. It wasn't because of COVID, but right before COVID, we launched this, and we're on. I think this week we'll hit 350, episode 350. I think this month. And like I said, that's the goal: is interviewing investors and interviewing clients. That's one of the benefits: interviewing people I want to talk to. And the funny thing is, we did Zoom all the way up until end of 2023, and it was an intern that we had working on our show. He's like, "Hey man, like if you guys like Zoom's cool, but it's not. Like if you guys want to start doing this, like you want to interview someone across the country, do Zoom all day long. But man, you got people that are living down the street and you're doing Zoom with them." So he's the one that actually convinced us. And he actually, young guy, he gave us a budget. He went and built it all out, set it up for us. So we definitely had a who in him and helping us get that all off the ground.
Yeah. And, to kind of like insight into what that young man said, right? Like, I think it's really intelligent because most people, when they think of a podcast, they're thinking of, hey, how many listeners do I have? How many subscribers, right? Like, what are my download numbers? Like, they're thinking of their audience. But I think what you just alluded to right now of like, you can have people that you're not doing business with yet. Just the opportunity to have a stage, the opportunity to show up and highlight somebody else and how you can create that is going to open really, really great doors. It's like the ultimate networking tool.